So welcome to this week's midweek message. This is the start of a new season for the next 5 weeks or so, where we're going to be looking at exploring Advent. We're right at the end of the church calendar year and all the stuff that goes on, and I guess you've already got your Advent calendars sorted out, and you've got things in preparation. You've maybe been taking advantage of the early Black Friday sales and stuff. So you're ready for Advent and getting ready for Christmas. But often we have these seasons and we're not quite sure what they are or why they're there or what the purpose of them are. So we're going to explore. I'm going to do an introduction this week, and then across the next 4 weeks, the 4 weeks of Advent, we're going to have different people speaking and just sharing 10 minutes or so on an aspect of Advent. But I want to just set the scene for us quickly first to say, well, what is it? And I think it's fair to say that it's worth remembering that it's more than just a chocolate calendar. I know that's what most of us have experienced from being tiny little dots, and that was the thing you looked forward to, eating your chocolate every day, forgetting it for a couple of days by accident, and then having to gorge yourself on 3 or 4 little bits of cheap chocolate. Nowadays, it's kind of progressed. I was watching something on Saturday morning a few weeks ago, and you can now get beer Advent calendars. You get a different beer for every day of the month, or you get all sorts of different crazy calendars. You can get a wool calendar. Claire's got one for herself for this year. And then so there are themes, there are different traditions that have evolved to be part of the Advent story. And this year, I guess the biggest theme is reverse Advent. The number of organisations, we're involved in different ways as well, in blessing communities, blessing people who are around us as a reverse Advent, deliberate blessing rather than receiving. But where did it all begin? What is Advent? Well, it might not surprise you to realise that it grew out of an Old Testament habit that people had. Do you remember back in the summer? It seems so long ago when it was warm and gloriously sunny, and we looked at summer holy days. This idea that God set rhythms into the calendar of God's people for Israel so that they would remember and be reminded of his goodness. Leviticus 23 verse 1 to 4, which we used at the time, said, "The Lord said to Moses, Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, which you are to proclaim as official days for holy assembly." There were days for purpose in people's lives. And so Advent was a development, a Christian evolution of that step, that progress. And the church calendar sort of evolved very much from the natural Jewish calendar. That was the way that much of the culture that we experience now developed from. And so round about 400 AD, it was normal for monks to fast for the entirety of Advent. Now that's not necessarily something that we want to go back to, but hey, that's what they did. They would eat on the Sunday and they would fast the rest of the week. And that was the whole of the run-up to Christmas, run through Advent. That gradually morphed and moved a little bit. So it started off very much like Advent and then changed to being 3 days a week. And let's be honest, I think that one's pretty much gone now. Nobody seems to do that. But it was all about preparation. So much about fasting is about preparation, getting your heart and your mind ready for God, ready to look to him, ready to give him the attention that he's due, ready to be able to respond in the right way. And so the themes that we maybe now associate with Advent have evolved or been crystallized. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And gradually we've picked up on themes, and you can look, and there are many different themes that are woven in, and different traditions in churches pick up on different themes. But very, very central to them all are the same threads that run through. Considering about John the Baptist, that preparation. John the Baptist, you think about the fasting, suddenly, well, he was someone who lived on locusts and honey. And he didn't live the life of luxury, and he came to prepare the way for Jesus. We think about the waiting that Mary went through as the mother to be of Jesus. The waiting, she had 9 months of waiting from knowing that she'd been spoken to by the angel to being delivered of her first child. And all the excitement that we build around that, but it's still a real story of an individual woman experiencing something that is challenging, traumatic, brave, a fantastic thing. The whole concept of nativity, preparing for the arrival of God, the arrival of the Son of God on earth, into his creation, into what is was there and spoken to being at the very start of it. The Word of God came to dwell in the world that he spoke into being. Those themes, those thoughts, and the different perspectives, then we look at it, the people involved, the magi, the shepherds, all those different people. But every single one of the histories do tend to look at Jesus' second coming, that draw Advent to be more than just coming and looking for the arrival of this baby, cute and cuddly and amazing and awesome as he was. But it's more than that. It's more than just the arrival of a baby, even if it's an incredibly special baby. It's about the preparation for the second coming, the second arrival of Jesus. In Ezekiel, not the book that you probably assume that we'd go to, but bear with us a second. Ezekiel talks about the Spirit of God leaving Jerusalem through the East Gate when his people have basically turned their backs on God and are going into exile. In chapter 10, verse 18, there is this sense of, and it describes as God's Spirit rising up and leaving through the East Gate. And then later on, when you find that God brings his people back prophetically, you get the same thing. God returns, his Spirit returns through the East Gate, chapter 43, verse 4. When we zoom forward a little bit more, Jesus stands on the Mount of Olives, the same place where he'd wept tears and sweated blood and prayed, Father, if it's your will, I'll do it, but I'd rather it passed. At that same place, later on, after he's been resurrected and he's been with his disciples, it's recorded in Acts chapter 1, verse 12, that he is lifted up, disappears up into the cloud. The Mount of Olives is on the east side of Jerusalem. Literally, you could look straight out the east gate of the temple. That would be the line perfectly. That's where the Mount of Olives is, straight out the east gate, across the valley. So there's this sense in which there's this significance to this side. And then we start thinking about the second coming. Well, it says in the scriptures that he's going to come back in the same way, in that sense. And many people expect him to touch down in the same place on the east side, on the Mount of Olives. But the one that we're expecting to return, the one that we're preparing for in Advent, isn't just this baby, but is somebody else. Let me read to you Revelation 19, 11 to 16. Then I saw heaven opened, and a white horse was standing there. Its rider was named Faithful and True, for he judges fairly and wages a righteous war. His eyes are like the flames of fire, and on his head there are many crowns. A name was written on him that no one could understand except himself. He wore a robe dipped in blood, and his title was the Word of God. We know who this is. The armies of heaven, dressed in its finest pure linen, followed him on white horses. From his mouth there came a sharp sword to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, and he will release the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty, like juice flowing down from the winepress. On his robe at his thigh was written this title: King of all kings and Lord of all lords. We're not necessarily getting ready in Advent for the arrival of a baby. We're getting ready for the arrival of a king. So this Advent, join in with the videos over these next few weeks. You'll hear some interesting stuff, perspectives, angels and shepherds and kings and what was going on. Fantastic stuff. But remember, we prepare for the King, the return of the King. Have a great week. God bless.